Yes, what is happening, people? Now, I have completely forgotten I did not record an intro. So, this is a belated intro, and it's going to look weird because when I do the outro to the video, it's going to be the same setting. So, running into this, it's just a leg day, and I completely forgot to talk throughout the session. A little bit down to nerves, a little bit just because I was just fucking getting after it. But there is a little bit at the end where I give you a little tip on how you could add 51 kilos essentially onto a lift in a year. But it's not the most thought or talked about way of doing it, as opposed to just increasing load every single week. But stick around to the end of the video in the gym to hear about that. Otherwise, the rest of the video I will just be talking over me training, what I'm thinking about during those movements to get the most out of it, and sets and reps will be on the screen. So I start all my lower days or leg days, however you want to call them, with some form of ab work. So just for me at the moment, it's just the 2 sets on both my lower days, which is 2 times per week, working between like 8 and 15 reps. So not a top set back off approach, just failing between the 8 to 15. When I'm performing these ab movements, all I'm thinking about doing is flexing and extending the spine, meaning basically trying to bring my sternum down, or try and bring my chin under my balls, and then really try and curve on the way up. If you've done the cat and cow position in like yoga, that's a very good cue to use when you're doing your ab work. And when it comes to all ab work, as usual, always push it to failure. Abs are still a muscle, you still want to grow them. And I feel like now we're past the point where people are saying abs are made in the kitchen. They're definitely not. Abs are like any other muscle. If you want them, you're gonna have to train for them. Then again, my second movement on all my lower days is a adductor. Now for me, this is a weak point, so I'm trying to bring these up. So what you'll notice I do on this movement, but on pretty much all movements across the session, is that first rep, I don't just go from a dead stop into the first rep. I'll normally unrack it just a little bit. That way I'm building up as much tension in that muscle that I'm about to use in that lift, and then I'll perform the first rep. It just makes that first rep more effective as opposed to kind of just slinging it around for the first rep. Then when it comes down to adductor training, all I'm thinking about doing is bringing my knees together, or basically trying to crush my balls with my thighs. And what another cue you can use is with your feet is, yeah, rest them on the foot pad, but don't press through them, but also point them out towards the side of the room. So don't have them in a neutral, don't have them facing in, have them pointing out. This way it's going to put your adductor on top, it's going to give it best leverage, and it's going to make it the primary mover when you're moving through this movement. Think of it almost like when you're doing a lateral raise, you would have your pinky finger turned up like you're pouring out milk. It's the same sort of premise that you're doing that on the adductor. For me as well, I like to add just a slight pause in that stretch and a slight pause in that contraction. One, because the machine doesn't go that heavy and I'm already maxing it out anyway. And it gets to the point where if I put like 2 plates on this and I'm just slinging it around, it just starts to get stuck, especially with a gym pin in it. So just to reduce the loading overall on it, I add a pause in both ends just to make the movement overall harder, reducing that load. But yeah, this is a weak point for me, so I'm trying to bring these up at the moment. The last set as well, I will do a rest pause. So it's 11 to 15, and then I will fail wherever that is, and then I will take 5 breaths, and then I'll go again. I usually get anywhere between like 1 and 4 reps, which you'll see in this. I think I get 2 or 3. But yeah, the reason we do these rest pause sets is just to get more effective reps. Like you see nowadays on social media, everyone harps on about the last 5 reps are the most effective, and yes, that is true. Doesn't mean the ones prior to it weren't useful at all, but for sure those last few reps close to failure are the most effective reps. So doing a rest pause set, you're kind of getting rid of that first part of the set where you'll get into those effective reps, and you're just getting straight there. You're just kind of staying in that zone, and then you're getting like 3 very good effective reps, especially if your execution doesn't change going into that rest pause. Hamstring curl, this one being prone, lying hamstring curl, face down, arse up, whatever you want to call it. This for me is a movement I've always been able to do, don't get me wrong, like it's not hard. You get on a machine, right, and you curl up, but it's always been a machine or a movement that I've found hard to kind of connect with my hamstring. But since I've added a slight pause into that stretch, even though it is a shortened biased or shortened ranged movement, adding a slight pause into that stretch and not fully locking out my knee joint actually keeps tension on my hamstring the entire way through. And then just driving through, imagine trying to kick the back of my ass with my heels, keeping that lower back on the pad as much as I can. It does look like my lower back lifts up a little bit, when I'm performing this movement, but it's just the way my body's built. I know that might seem like a cop-out, but I do have lumbar lordosis, just meaning extra curvature of my lower back. So it looks like I'm curving it a lot, but that's just the way that my lower back sits. But yeah, kicking it right up and adding a slight pause into that stretch. And if you are someone that struggles with this movement in particular, also adding a slight pause into that contraction as well. You're not going to get anything, there's nothing wrong with doing that, as this is a short range movement, biased movement. So there's nothing wrong with spending a little bit more time in that contraction. And another thing to note on this as well is it's going to get very hard to get it short towards the end of the set. So adding in some partials at the end of these sets on these movements is not going to be a bad idea. I don't personally do it because I don't think I get that much more out of it, but it's definitely something you could try on these movements that do favor the shortened position and are harder to get it short. Then I go into some leg extensions here. Now, this is probably the most butchered exercise that I see in the gym when it comes to leg training. People not getting their quad fully short and just slinging it around. So to get a good setup, first of all, make sure your knee is in line with the point of rotation of the machine, basically meaning where the machine pivots around. So you can see as I'm kicking up, there's that bit, obviously, that my shin goes on, but there's a bit that doesn't move, and that is the rotation point. That is the axis. Make sure your knees are in line with that, first of all. Make sure your back is against the pad the entire time. It doesn't matter if you're leaning back too much or crunch down on your abs, just maintain a tight brace throughout. And if you can, use a seat belt, keep those hips down. Now, it shouldn't be used to keep the hips down, but your hips are shooting up anyway. You should be aiming to keep your hips down, so pulling yourself into that seat, remaining tight throughout, but it does just help with extra stability. Then when you're actually going through the movement, instead of thinking about just kicking up, think about kicking up and forwards. So really trying to picture yourself in your quads and just imagine dragging the foot plate up, the foot pad up, and imagine your quad actually getting shorter as you move through the movement. This way you're going to actually be shortening that quad when you get through it. And when you think you've reached peak contraction, go a little bit further. That's the one thing I'll say, because like I said at the start, a lot of people just fail to get their quad fully short. And when it comes to leg extension, that's why we're on there. We're trying to get the quad fully short. And as it is the only movement, we can get the quad fully short. So spend a bit of time there. You know, you don't need to be spending ages in the lengthened on a leg extension, because most leg extensions actually don't get that deep anyway. And you want to bias that shortened position anyway, because most of your squat patterns are going to be biased in that lengthened. Then I move on to my squat pattern. This is my only squat pattern of the week, and it's only one set on here. So pendulum squatting for me, just running this up at the moment as opposed to hack, because I've been on a hack for like the last 2 years. With this, I have my feet nice and low. I do come up off my heels a little bit, but I do like that. I just get a bit more quad out of it. And I add a slight pause into that bottom position. And the reason for this is just to make sure that I'm not using any connective tissue, so tendons, ligaments, cartilage, to come out of that hole, and I'm actually using contracted muscle and moving through that as I go through the movement. That way I'm actually going to be stimulating my quads more than if I was just bouncing out of the hole. Another thing to note on when you're doing any sort of quad training that is a squat pattern, that is basically a lower body pressing movement, is instead of just thinking about pressing the weight away from you, think about dragging your heels up, your feet up the pad as you move through the movement. This way you're really going to switch your quads on. And yeah, just embrace the pain and understand you can push it a lot further than you think you can when it comes to these squat movements. You just need to control your breathing. So breathing in on the eccentric and then having a full tank of air about for the last 20% of the movement, holding that in for the last 20%, exploding out of the hole and then breathing out on the way up. But I would say having the most of your air in your system until about 60-70% of the movement, and then breathing the rest out for the rest, and then just try and keep the reps continuous. Then I move on to my hip hinge for the session. So 2 sets here on an SLDL. Now this originally started out as a dumbbell RDL, which I maxed out the dumbbells. Then it moved on to a belt squat RDL, which I maxed out again, and now I'm onto an SLDL, so it just takes me a lot less time to load up, and I enjoy it. I sit well with it. So with this, there's not really much thinking going on. Keep a tight brace, push the hips back, challenge the entire posterior chain. I'm not trying to get glutes, I'm not trying to get hamstrings, I'm not trying to get lower back. I'm just trying to lift some heavy weight and stimulate my entire posterior chain. I'm not overthinking it when it comes to this. I'm just keeping tight, controlling my breathing and pushing it as far as I can. Some weeks I'm better than others, and when it comes down to the rep ranges on these, it's 2 sets, 7 to 12, but I'll alternate kind of what I do sometimes depending on how I'm feeling in warm-ups. I'll do the heavier set first, and then I'll move into a lighter set, or I might do the lighter set first and then move into a heavier set. It really doesn't matter. the whole back offset, top set approach doesn't matter. As long as you're lifting close to failure, you're going to be building muscle. Then second to last movement of the session being this single leg hamstring curl, just the one set here. I did originally have a rest pause, but we've took that out for a little bit. This here, if you haven't tried a single leg seated hamstring curl, try it. I can't even describe to you the pain that you're in when you send this to failure. Likewise with the lying hamstring curl, I don't fully lock out my knee joint when I'm on this. I find that I lose all the tension in my hamstring when I do lock it out, but I go as close to lockout as I can before I lose that tension. So that's why you see me don't come necessarily all the way up, but when you see me start the new rep, that is where I've reached peak stretch in my hamstring for me. For everyone else, that's going to look completely different. And then when I'm coming into that shortened position, into the contraction, that is as much as I can contract my hamstring. I can't contract it any further. If I do go any further, my lower back is going to lift up, my hips are going to shoot upwards and forwards. I'm going to lean back, which is actually not me contracting my hamstring any tighter. It's just me using my body, using leverage to basically move the machine further. And yeah, when it comes down to these machine single joint movements, whatever you can call them, accessories, still breathing and bracing throughout, just like you're going through a squat pattern, just like you're going through a heavy hinge or a heavy press. You know, just because you're on a machine, you've got that external stability, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be bracing as hard as you can. You know, breathing into your stomach, tensing those abs, not just out, but in a 360-degree like radius, the circumference, whatever you want to call it, mate. Haven't been to school in fucking ages. In a 360-degree direction, that's all you need to know. And just maintaining contact with the back pad the entire time. Again, you don't need to excessively lean forward. You're not going to get a much greater stretch on the hamstring. It's just not how it works, especially if you're leaning forward through lower back rounding. You're not actually getting anything more out of it. Yes, if you can get it perfect with hips moving forwards, hip hinging, then yeah, you might get a little bit more out of it, but otherwise you're not going to get too much. And then I was meant to speak throughout the session, however, I completely forgot, and then I got to calves and I remembered that I should probably speak. So I'm going to take a break and I'm going to let you listen to this because I'm about to drop some absolute wisdom about how you can add 51 kilos onto a lift in a year.
I'm about to do my 2 sets of calves to finish and putting my shoes back on because I don't want to tear my toes apart. But yeah, I've just got to the end of the workout and I realised I have not spoken the entire workout, but it has been a good session, progressed on everything, which is fucking good. Up 5 kilos on the pendulum and only dropped 2 reps, and it was a fucking good set. Everything else progressed, weight and reps. What I do a lot of is, and I'm not looking at the camera right now because I'm looking for this, is I use these and I'm about to whack them on for my calf set now. And basically the thought process behind this is I'm not treating this as a load progression, I treat this as a rep progression. So what I do is, whereas a lot of people, let's just say you do 20 kilos on a lift and you've still got another rep or 2 before you hit the top of the rep range, instead of upping the weight and dropping some reps potentially, or repeating the same weight and potentially matching the reps, I'll whack 1 or 2 of these on depending on how the machine loads, so either 0.5 or a kilo, and I'll aim to get an extra rep. If I don't, it is what it is. As long as the set's taken to failure, it's still going to be stimulating muscle growth. But if I do get an extra rep, I've progressed it by a 0.5 or a kilo and gained a rep. In my head, that's better than repeating the weight and getting the rep, as long as execution and form and setup stays the exact same. But it's just another way of constantly making sure you're progressing and just essentially bullying your muscle to grow. That's all you've got to do when you're in the gym, really. Just performance is going to dictate hypertrophy, and the more you can bully that muscle on with good form, the quicker, better, more efficiently you're going to grow. So if you haven't thought about investing in these, get these in, and instead of just taking rep progressions, aim to take a rep progression but add these on every single time you do a set. So if you're doing that 20 kilos and you got it for 8 last week and your rep range is up to 10, instead of just repeating 20 kilos and aiming for 9, do 20.5 or 21 and aim for 9. If you get it, great, fucking great. If you don't, well, at least you've matched, and eventually that rep will come. So maybe in 3 weeks' time you've done that, you've added on 1.5 kilos, you finally get that 9th rep. But now you've got that 9th rep, so you've got a +1 rep over 3 weeks, but you're also 1.5 kilos up, as opposed to getting 20 kilos for 8 for 3 weeks and then getting 1 rep. To me, it's just a fucking no-brainer, and it works. So yeah, try out.
So a little bit of talking there, and there's a little bit more that goes on here, but I still want to talk you through kind of what I'm thinking when I do my calf work. So all I'm thinking about here is spending as long as I can in the movement, as long as I can in the stretch, as long as I can in the contraction. Obviously not taking the absolute piss with it. When I'm moving through the contraction, all I'm doing or thinking about is trying to bring my heels to the back of my knee. And that's for me, that changed it when it came to calf training. Now I can actually feel my calves when I'm going through a movement. Again, keeping tight brace throughout and just really sending it there. I mean, I know nowadays, obviously high reps aren't fancy, they're not desirable and stuff like that, but with calf work, I do like to keep it no more than like 12 or 15, which I know for some people is like astronomically high, but for me that's just normal. But I think if you're going above that on calf work, you're probably not going to be getting there when it comes to intensity, because calves is one of those things where it hurts, and it hurts quickly, but just because it hurts, it doesn't mean that you're done. And I know that goes for everything, but I think with calves specifically, they do hurt a lot, and I think a lot of people bottle it because of how much it hurts. So keeping those reps lower just means that you're going to be able to hit failure a lot easier on a movement like calves. So yeah, give that a go. But yeah, when it comes down to calf training, all I'm thinking about is dragging my heels to the back of my kneecaps and just sending it all the way there.
Do you see? Fucking hell. Standard of the execution of that set did not change at all from last week and previous weeks. I got +1, so that's 12. Last week I got 11. But I've also added a 0.5 each side, so I'm a kilo up and a rep. Now, to me, that is so much better than getting a kilo less, but a rep on last week's. So take that as you will, but that there is a fucking good set. Now that is legs done. Progressions across the board, +2 on that one with an extra kilo, but yeah, we'll fucking take that. Also what I'll do is when I do max out the rep range after adding on 0.5s and 1 kilos, once I hit the top of the rep range, I'll make a big jump in weight. So anywhere from like 1.25 to maybe even 10 kilos depending on the movement. Obviously your bigger compound movements like a leg press, they're gonna maybe be like 5-10 kilo jumps, but stuff like arm work, maybe even like a leg extension or a hand curl, 5 kilos max. But more realistically, probably like a 2.5, maybe even like 3.75, so a 2.5 and a 1.25. But yeah, once I've maxed out the rep range and I'm comfortable and happy with the execution, I'll make a bigger jump, and then I'll just repeat the process. And it might seem stupid adding 0.5 or a kilo on, but if I offer you now to add 51 kilos onto a lift in a year, are you going to take it? Probably are. So yeah, look at it that way.
Right, now, thank you for watching today's video. So hopefully you found some of that interesting. Comment down below if you did learn anything new, and if it has helped you, and if it has opened your eyes to anything. And hopefully that little tip at the end on how to progress your lifts helps you a lot. You know, like I said in the video, I don't really see those 0.5 kilo plates as weight progressions, even though they technically are. I don't see them as that. I just see that as me repeating the weight as last week, trying to add a rep. But hopefully you found this video somewhat interesting and I didn't bore you completely. I promise you, moving forward, the videos will be a little bit better as I get better at doing this. If there is anything you want to see more of, if it is still training, if you want to see a bit more life stuff, what I'm eating, let me know in the comments down below, or drop me a DM on Instagram at Josh Dandy. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video, and thank you for watching.